Day everyone. I hope that you're all doing great. Today I don't come with a motivational video or ministering. Today I am actually here with an educative video. I thought you might find it interesting, or it might be actually beneficial for me to do some education on the condition of albinism. So I want us to look at, because I know a lot of people in society don't know or have not really a real idea of what is albinism and all of that. So I want to look as us to look at what it is, what causes it, what happens for there to be a person living with albinism. So first of all, looking at it medically, albinism is a gene mutation. It falls under a gene mutation. So explaining what a gene mutation is in simplest form is that everything in our body, our cells have to replicate themselves in order for things to keep on moving, right? In order for there to be more when others die and everything. So every day cells are now going through mitosis, which is a process of them copying, duplicating themselves. And with gametes, which are like sex cells, which is ovaries and sperm cells, they go through meiosis. So it's mitosis. Meiosis is whereby they now separate, and instead of having 46 chromosomes, they then have 23. So that the normal human being, from both parents, now 23, it will be equal to 46 chromosomes. So that is what is always happening in our body. So the same thing with genes. Genes have to copy themselves. They have to replicate themselves. So what then happens with a gene mutation is that through the process of transcription, whereby the new gene copies the old gene to duplicate the old gene, misreads or misrewrites the original copy. So if maybe the code of the original gene is like ABC, the new gene will read CBC. Sorry, it's a school, I apologize. Let's make another example. Maybe the gene is BAY. The new gene will then read ABY. So it will either skip something or read something wrong, right? That's what happens for there to be a mutation. It does not copy the original gene like it's supposed to copy it. It skips something, it copies wrong. So then now it forms a new gene, because now it's not a replication, or it's not a duplicate of that gene that it was supposed to copy. So that's the same thing with albinism. As I explained, it is a gene mutation. So then what happens with albinism during the transcription? The gene does not read melanin, or it skips out melanin. Now melanin is very quite chemical that plays quite not important, but it plays quite a role in our bodies. So melanin is responsible for pigmentation. Melanin is responsible for quite a few things, but a lot of pigmentation. So melanin is responsible where melanin affects the eyes, the hair, and the skin color. So pigmentation is the skin color of what that specific organism is supposed to be, right? So let me start by explaining this. Now I've explained to you that albinism is a mutation and how a mutation happens, and that it affects the three parts. Hence you see the impairments in people with albinism with eyes, hair, and skin. Now the first thing that you need to really understand before we go further is that pigmentation is not brown, okay? And albinism is a gene mutation that is across all nations, all races. You get white people, Chinese, you get Indian people with albinism. It's just that it shouts out more in black people. So pigmentation is not brown. So you must not say to people with albinism they are white, or associate them to say they are white. No, white people do have pigmentation. It's just that their pigmentation is that color according to their race, right? So pigmentation, it colors our skin, and it plays a very important role in terms of being a protective layer over our skin. So every human being, regardless of their race, they have pigmentation. So now with people born with albinism, they don't have that, because they don't have what? Melanin, which is now responsible for what? For pigmentation. So pigmentation is the coloring of skin that you find in almost every living thing. So then even with plants. So what makes red roses red is the red pigmentation. What makes animals the colors that they are, it's that color pigmentation. So pigmentation is not black. Pigmentation is the color that organism is meant to be. So that's why you find albinism in all races. It's not a black people disease or a black people condition. There is white people with albinism. So what then is albinism? To explain further, I've explained that it's a gene mutation, and it's very related to pigmentation, and that you find it amongst all races. So now if you find it amongst all races, then what is it? So the absence of melanin affects three parts, like explained, which is the eyes, right? So you'll see, I forgot now the name of actually the condition of the eyes moving like this, and it's on my tongue, but I forgot it now. So you can see with my eyes now that they are constantly moving. So it's not something that the person is in control with. Like now, I'm not in control of it. I'm not moving them on purpose. It's a biological thing. It happens out of my control, out of my I'm not even quite really aware of it, unless I'm looking at myself like in a video like that, but I'm not quite really considerate or very cautious of it, because it happens, right? So that is what then happens. So okay, I think I should have started with this to first explain people with albinism. They don't have any what I can call total inability to perform certain body functions. So their body can perform everything. It's just that some parts are impaired, and we talked about those three parts, and that's what you need to understand. So a person with albinism can see, but because of the movement in the eyes, of which I forgot the term now, that means that is now impaired. It's more challenged. Now what makes it more challenged is because our eye works like sort of a camera. So it takes a picture of what it sees, and then it goes to the back of the eye relating to the brain, and then it interprets that you are seeing a book, right? So that's why with people that don't have albinism, your eyes are standing firm, so that the camera can take direct shots and proper shots. Now with the movement of the eyes, that means that the camera struggles to take the shots. But that does not mean that people with albinism see things that are shaking, see the world as shaking, or we see things upside down, or we see green as yellow, whatever. We see blue as blue, we see green as green, we see yellow as yellow, we see a book as a book, we see a moving car moving. We see the speed of the moving car as you see it, right? We see a standing car as you see it. The only difficulty is that now our eye has to work very hard with the process of taking the picture and interpreting, because now it's moving. The focus is not quite stern than a normal, I don't want to say normal, but than a person without albinism. So that's the first impairment. So you must understand, you must not be like to a person, can you see me? Your eyes are moving or what? No, they can't see you. Believe me, they can't see you as you are. It's just that movement, it's relating to the focus. So I don't know exactly how does melanin play a role in that, but I'm sure you can even see with the eye colors. We tend to have very light eye colors, blue, all those colors. Mine is actually mixed, but interesting. So we actually tend to have lighter eye colors as well, right? But I don't know exactly on how does melanin play a role in terms of the focusing of the eye. But I know that because of its absence, the eye moves and the focus is not steady as it's meant to be. Therefore, the eyesight then becomes impaired. But note that everybody's eyesight is different. So don't expect everybody with albinism wears glasses full time. Don't expect that. Some eye doctors will have that perception. It depends with your doctor, but the eyesights are different, and the strengths of them are different. So when you see somebody not wearing glasses, don't ask why you're not wearing glasses. It's because it doesn't mean the fact that we all have albinism, we all see in the same way, or our eyesight is the same. Just like with normal human beings, your eyesights are not the same. Sorry, did I say normal human beings? Sorry. I apologize for that. I don't want people coming for me. Just like with people without albinism, right? Whereby your eyesights are not the same. Okay, so now you understand why the eyes, in terms of why the eyes move, because there's no melanin, and that affects now the lens. And the second thing that it affects the skin color, right? And the protective layer. Now, one thing that pigment does, it's to protect the skin. Now, I've already explained that pigment is not brown. Get that out of your mind. Pigment is the color of which whatever organism that organism is supposed to be, right? So when there is no pigment, there isn't that protective layer that is normally there, and obviously then there isn't that color that is normally there. Hence our skin color is so light, and hence our skin color is like this. Now what that does is that it makes our skin super sensitive. So it makes it super sensitive because there isn't that protective layer like other people that don't have the condition. Now understand this, it's not only sensitive from sun, it's sensitive from everything, like from a whole lot of things, chemicals, cleaning products, and all the other things. So it's not only with sun. So don't get the idea that it's only with sun. It's not only with sun, it's with a whole lot of other things. So now I'm also talking to people with albinism. Your skin is not only sensitive to sun. You should watch what you touch, what you use to clean, to do whatever, and what you apply on your skin. It's sensitive as a whole. Then the other thing it affects, which is the hair. Now our hair is different actually. You will see that some people with albinism have ginger hair. That is because there's different types or groups of albinism. It's not one thing. It's just that I think there is a common, I don't know. Okay, let me not go there. I'll explain that one day. But yeah, that's because there is different types. It's not the same. There's quite a variety. So yeah. So then the hair becomes sensitive. Obviously the scalp is sensitive because it's part of the skin, but the hair becomes sensitive, and therefore it reacts quicker to things such as chemicals and all of that. Please do watch your hair, and who touches your hair and what you use on your hair. If now I'm addressing a person with albinism, or maybe you know a person like that, do let them know about that. So now that I've talked to you about how it affects, the three things that it affects, and I've explained that there's nothing that does not work, it's just that it becomes different and less of protective mechanisms, but everything works. So yeah, I do know that albinism in South Africa, and actually I think worldwide, is classified under disabilities, but that's a topic for another day. Here I'm just here to explain what albinism is. So I want to go back to the eyesight a bit now. So you'll see even with the eyesight, it's different. What the focus then becomes more challenging when the person has to read smaller fonts and when the person has to see far, because now remember your eye has to work a bit more effectively, and because of the movement now it struggles. I just want you to imagine, if it's moving like this, imagine moving and the font is small, it can become quite challenging for the eye to really focus on the font. Okay, but I want us to move on to the next thing. The next thing is that how does it happen? I explained that it's a gene mutation, but how does the gene mutation and how does it all of that happen? One of the important parts that you should have heard is that through meiosis of gametes, the sperm end up with 23 chromosomes, and the ovary ends up with 23 chromosomes, and when they become a zygote, they then have 46, and all of that happens, right? When with a human, it's 46, 23 from the mom and 23 from the dad. Now, for their albinism to exist, there has to be parents that are both carriers. Now I'm going to explain this. I'm going to flip the camera and then I'm going to explain this while you are looking at I actually dotted it down. I thought it might make it much more easier for you guys to understand if you are looking. Okay, there we go. So okay, we're gonna have to do it like this. Okay, so what happens, and one thing I want to tell people, I always hear people have these things to say about albinism people and people that have albinism and whatever. You can always be a carrier and you never know. A lot of people are carriers of the albinism gene, just that it's within the genotype and not the phenotype. So the phenotype is how you look, and the genotype is the coding of your gene, so how that gene is coded, right? So to explain, for there to be a baby with albinism, both the parents have to be carriers of albinism, well, of the gene, like for there to exist a baby that has albinism, both the parents have to carry the gene. Now there's four options. I think there's more, but I think there's the main four that I want you to see on how does it probably happen. Now you see here we have parent A, right? Parent A's phenotype, which is how they look, it's normal skin, right? I'm saying normal skin, I'm not saying black skin, because I explained to you that pigment is not brown. It's just how the color, that's how that organism is supposed to look. So Chinese have their own pigments, Indians have their own pigments, black people have their own pigment, white people have their own pigment. So don't call people with albinism white. They are definitely not white. Okay. Parent B also has a phenotype of a normal skin. But look at their genotypes, right? The genotypes in the coding of the gene. Now, what happens with most gene disorders and most gene what's is that let me start here. With genes, the dominant gene overpowers the recessive gene. So there's always a dominant and a recessive gene. So in this case, these people are carriers. So the small a represents the gene of albinism. The big A represents the pigmentation. So you see both parents are carriers. But because they have one gene that is one of their genes that they got through the gene pulling, which God decides, they got to have a dominant pigment gene, which means then they are carriers, right? They have the gene, but you won't see the gene, meaning you won't see them having albinism because they are carriers. They are both carriers. So in a lot of times, this is how it looks, whereby you get a baby with albinism. So you see both parents are carriers. They have normal skin. Why? Because they have the dominant gene. One of the genes is dominant. So the pigment is dominant over the no pigment, right? Or the melanin is dominant over the no melanin. So then this is what happens, people. like I say, I think it's really God that decides. So these are the options. So you can see parent A on top and parent B on top. So the puzzle, the God puzzle gene, God puzzle, we couldn't call that. What happens is that the child gets one from the other parent and one from the other parent. So the options are that the child will get this child, like this first child, or it doesn't, not in order, but the child can either get both dominant genes from both parents. If it looks like this, the child will not have albinism and there will not be a carrier. Though mom and dad were a carrier, they won't be a carrier. But remember, this is like God's, I don't know, multiple choice, God's puzzle. It's random. It's not even according to order, right? It can just happen, right? You can be carriers and have kids, 5 kids that look like this, that don't have the gene and don't carry it. And then the second one, okay, let's look at this one, whereby now the child gets one dominant gene from one parent and the recessive gene from one parent. Now that can be from either parent, as you can see here and here. It can be from either of the parents, right? Sorry, there is an error here. I see this A was supposed to be in green, the capital in this one, but I'm sure you see what I'm talking about, right? And they can either get it from the recessive gene from either of the parents. And then what happens that this child becomes a carrier like mom and dad. What is their phenotype? Normal skin. They don't have albinism, but they carry the gene. And then this is what happens when a baby with albinism is born, is that baby takes both recessive genes or the gene of albinism from both of the parents. Then the child is born with albinism. Now, like I said, this is God's decision, because you can have 5 children and you can be carriers and they can all have albinism. At the same time, you can be carriers and you can have 10 children and they can be non-carriers and not carriers of the gene while you carry the gene. Or all of your children can have normal skin but be carriers. Or you can have all 3, right? You can have all 3. You can have a non-carrier with normal phenotype, a carrier, and an albinism child. So that just depends with God. Then we have a second option that can happen, whereby parent A has normal skin, and look at their genotype. They don't carry the albinism gene. And then parent B has normal skin, phenotype, what we see, normal skin, but look at their genotype, they are a carrier. So these 2 people then get married, or let me not say get married, because they conceive a child, right? And then once they conceive a child, look at their genes there. So now we put this parent that's a carrier, you see, their gene, they have a recessive gene. This one does not have a recessive gene. Now with this, in this situation, the possibility is that the phenotype of all of their children will be normal skin. They will not have children with albinism, but they have a high possibility of producing carriers. So you can see the top 2, I forgot the A there, the top 2 are non-carriers. The bottom are carriers. So with them, the mom or the dad, whoever this parent is that has a carrier, can have children with carriers. Again, they can have 6 children, all carriers. They can have 3 children, non-carriers, or a mix of it, just on the decision of God. Then we have another option whereby the phenotype is normal skin and the parent is a non-carrier, normal skin and a non-carrier. And then we have parent B who is a carrier and has the albinism condition. So now a person who's a non-carrier with normal skin marries a person with albinism, right? And then these people conceive a child. And when they conceive a child, now this is what happens. You see the big A's and the small A's. Now this is the parent with albinism can give. They give both. They can only give recessive, and the parent that does not have it can only give dominant. So then what happens is that these people will produce 100% carriers and no albinism babies. So all of their children are bound to be carriers of albinism, but they will not have albinism. So maybe albinism might come back when maybe this child marry their child, these two parents' child marries a carrier, and then they possibly can have a grandchild that maybe looks like granddad or grandmom. So but if a non-carrier marries a person with albinism, they will not have children. And yes, it is guaranteed. It's the same thing with here. It can happen that with the grandchildren also, there is never albinism kids for quite a long time, and maybe it's possible that the albinism gene might sort of die along the line, whereby kids looking like this will be produced among grandchildren, great grandchildren, or it will, yeah. So people, it's just like it's God's decision. So then we have another option whereby a parent who has a phenotype of normal skin, right? But then they are a carrier, and then they get married to somebody who has albinism, so the genotype is recessive. So this person has a recessive gene, but they have a dominant one, so they have normal skin, but they carry the albinism gene. And then you have a parent who has albinism, who's guaranteed that they carry the gene, they will pass it on, right? So then this is how then the chart looks. Now with them, it's a 50-50% chance. With them, there's 50% chance that they will get carriers, and 50% chance that they'll get albinism babies. So with these people, they can have 4 kids and all of them can have albinism. They can have 4 kids and all of them can be carriers. They can have a mix of it. It just depends on what God decides. But these people have a 50-50% chance of having either carriers or babies with albinism. This one that we were looking at, whereby the other parent is not a carrier, they 100% will have carriers only. And whereas the other one, it depends on God, and the other one also, it depends on God. So this is how then I can possibly explain the concept of albinism. Now you see here, like I said, it can skip generations. Let me come. It can skip a lot of generations, right? It's just like I said, it's a puzzle of God, really. It can skip a lot of generation. A lot of people are carriers and they don't know that they're carriers, and they've been carriers and having a lot of carriers within their bloodline. So you can never know until you do gene testing or whatever. But I know a lot of people, it becomes visible and we see it once we see that there is somebody with the condition. But you can be a carrier not knowing. And if there is a person with albinism within your family, then there is a chance that you are a carrier. There's quite a big chance that you are a carrier, but there's also the same chance that you're not a carrier, right? So it skips generations. The other thing is that people, there's no way, let's say maybe your aunt has it or your uncle has it, but no. You don't get the gene from them. You get the gene directly from the people that conceived you, from your parents. So both of the parents must be carriers. So baby daddies and husbands that divorce and leave mothers that give birth to babies with albinism, honey, it's not it's not her. You both carry the gene. Otherwise, if you did not carry the gene, definitely she wouldn't have a child having the condition of albinism. So I'll continue with videos when I have the time, going into more detail, also giving explanations on a few things and giving some education, because I know a lot of people albinism don't have a lot of education on the condition itself, on the things to use, how to treat it, how to take care of it, a lot of things, and they don't have access to such resources as dermatologists and all of that. So I'll continue doing videos just to really help out where I can. So if you have a person that you know that has albinism, or okay, just be careful on how you do it, because some may find it offensive. Maybe send the video to them, or maybe send them my profile yeah, or if you have baby mothers with babies with albinism, I'd advise send them my profile, because I'll put up more videos that go in depth, that focus on what the condition is about, and that explains it into depth. Thank you so much for listening. I'm sure you've gained something from it, and now you understand how things work out. Tell me things that you would like to know. You are more than welcome to comment and ask me questions. I will answer. Just don't be rude, and please don't act like a 5-year old. Ask questions that are really relevant to your age, that are really things that can be resourceful, that I can answer, that make sense. Don't ask things that don't make sense. I'm gonna ignore you. But you can literally ask anything. I won't become offended. I've overcome that stage a long time ago. So you can ask anything that you think maybe you want to know, and maybe I'll make a video on it. But I'm gonna continue making videos on this when I get the time, and just educating people. Thank you so much. I hope that you learned from what I just explained to you. I mean, I took the time to write it down and explain how genes work. Okay, have a great day ahead of you, or an evening. Bye.